Hey everybody, Fisher Brothers with Fisher Blades. And today we wanted to talk about something that we talk about a lot here at Fisher Blades in the process of designing knives and using knives and talking about knives and other stuff too. And it is good or bad versus preference. And the reason why we're bringing it up is that there are a lot of very emphatic and kind of absolute statements made out in the knife world and other worlds about this is the best steel for whatever.
You can't use that steel for that kind of knife.
Right. And so, we think that's honestly kind of bullshit, or can be bullshit. Sometimes it might be true, but more often than not, it comes down to something else. It comes down to preference. And we have some other ideas around that we'll talk about later. But let's talk about, like, for example, the whole super steel MagnaCut thing. We like MagnaCut. It's a cool steel, but it's not the best steel necessarily. And
right, what
are your ideas on that?
There are always trade-offs, right? So you have different steels. We all know that edge retention, toughness, etc., are better or worse depending on the steel. But when you get your feet on the ground doing a task, there is not one steel that will shine with one task and another just falls down, unless it's bad heat treat or something. So a lot of times when people talk about the best steel, the best materials, the best design, it really comes from a place of what their preference is, what their training has been.
Right.
I was a woodworker for many years, and the shop that I started with and kind of learned from, I learned on his tools. So now I buy certain brands and types of tools because that's how I learned. And I'm able to do it really well with the tools that I learned on. Whereas some people might think I'm crazy for using a specific tool for a job that it's not, quote unquote, made for, it's not generally used for. But, I can make a, 10-foot maple table that's beautiful.
Right.
So I think it's important to remember that no one really has the ultimate authority on what's right or wrong. If it works for you, then it works.
There might be one ring to rule them all, but there's no one knife to rule them all.
That is absolutely true. And of course, the old adage that the best tool for a job is the one that you have on you.
Right.
And so we all make trade-offs. When I go backcountry, I don't bring 8 knives. Well, sometimes I do, but generally I try to think about the tasks that I might have and choose a knife that I'm comfortable using for those tasks. And it means that sometimes 5% of the things I do with that knife, it might be difficult or unusual to use that type of knife for it, but it still works. I can learn how to do it.
Right.
For example, this cool knife from Exodus Knife and Tool, the Adventure Craft, I could baton with this. Of course, there are limitations on the size and etc. But if I was making some kindling for a little fire for lunch or dinner, this would do just fine. Now, is it the perfect tool for the job?
Right.
Maybe, maybe not. I mean, maybe it is because I'm able to do it.
Right.
And I have it on me. So don't fall for the hype, even our hype, because a lot of times we will express features of our knives that we consider good or bad based on our knowledge and preference.
Right. So we want to be clear, it is preference. And
yeah.
Like here's an example completely outside of the knife world. What's the best single-handed boat for blue water sailing?
Right. So if you guys don't know, I did a lot of sailing, single-handed sailing, and the sailboats are a lot like knives. There are a lot of trade-offs. You want comfort, you're going to trade off some speed. You want speed, you're going to trade off some comfort. Many other examples. But you have to decide what's the most important to you. For me, it was always speed.
Right.
So I had a somewhat uncomfortable boat in certain situations because I had the capacity for that speed. So it's the same with tools and knives as well. Every knife design every steel, every material has a trade-off.
Right.
It might be strong but heavy.
Right.
Like if you want a strong knife, make it thick.
Right.
But then you're going to get the weight.
And like with the Beckwith Covert, we made a trade-off because my bias is to power slashing, which the Tonto blade is
Right.
really ideal for. Can you stab with it, thrust with it? Of course you can. Is it perfect for that? No. I made the trade-off of having something that I
Right.
could do this and do this, but not quite as well as another blade shape, like a dagger blade shape. So, yeah. When you're making a decision about what tool to use, don't believe people's hype. That's really the bottom line.
And skills trump everything else.
100%.
Yeah, like this guy I read on Bushcraft USA forums about 10 or 15 years ago who had learned to break down animals with a Swiss Army knife. And he did that for 40 or 50 years. So he learned to do it with a little Swiss Army knife. And if you were to go into Cabela's and ask them, hey, is this knife good for hunting? And showed them a Swiss Army knife, I mean, they would freak out and be like, oh my God, no, you need this. You need that. Well, this old man didn't need it. And it's because of his skill and how he learned. So remember that your skill can overcome certain design features of a knife that might not be perfect for what you're doing.
Cool. All right. Well, that's it. Fisher Brothers out.
Freedom first.